This is Answer Me That on Storm FM, sponsored by Bar Uno.
Hello and welcome to Answer Me That on Storm FM. We're here to answer all the questions you've had throughout the week, including the ones you couldn't be bothered to Google. So in today's show we're going to be telling you how records were made, as in the original records made of vinyl, why eggs are good for bodybuilders, what's the difference between assassination and murder, and what's the oldest known map of Antarctica, and much, much more. You can join in today by sending in your questions or helping answer some of our questions by emailing studio@stormfm.com, text Storm plus your message to 60300, go to our Facebook page, facebook.com/stormamt, or go to our website, answermethat.tk.
This is Answer Me That on Storm FM. Send your questions to studio@stormfm.com, facebook.com/stormamt, or text Storm plus your message to 60300. Text charged at your standard network rate.
So our first question of today is, how are records made and how do they work? But before we actually get into that, I'm going to go a bit into the history of it. So before records were made, you generally didn't have recorded music. It was sheet music written down or some form of just mechanical instrument reading a written out piece of music. So first of all, you had those little cylinders with the pins coming off, which plug the needles as it rotates. Then you had the piano players and things like that. And the first actual version of it was when you had wax cylinders and they would get a needle, attach it to an arm, and it would slowly rotate these wax cylinders and engrave into it the sound waves put out by whatever they were recording. This was developed then into records, and they started doing it with vinyl and things like that. So that's how you got to the first sort of proper recorded music before you got onto tapes and CDs and digital media that we have now. But the way records are actually made is a master recording's made usually in a studio, where a sound engineer will work with it and record the sound onto an object called a lacquer, which is placed on a record cutting machine. As it rotates, as I was saying before, the electrical signals from the master recording travel to the cutting head, which would be a needle. It would cut out the sound waves. The needle etched the grooves into the lacquer into a spiral into the center, which is why at the end of a record on old movies and stuff you get it where it just skips that last bit of static sound. So the lacquer is then coated in a metal such as silver or nickel to produce metal master, which is separated from the lacquer, and the disc, which has ridges then instead of grooves in it, is used to create a metal record, or the mother record, which is then used as a stamper to stamp vinyl. So it's placed onto a hydraulic press, and the vinyl is sandwiched between these two indentations, and it's steamed to make it more malleable so the stamp can impress it easier basically without damaging the plastic. The disc is then put into water, and that's how the record's made. The way it plays back is quite basic. The needle just reads all these little ridges from the sound waves, and it's put back through an amplifier before putting back into the speaker. That's how they work. In a similar way to CDs, the way CDs work is when they're put in to be burnt, the laser will actually cut tiny holes you can't or generally can't see with your naked eye, and that's usually in binary, so ones and zeros, and the computer will read that at high speed with the laser, looking for these little holes, much the way that the record player looks for these pits and troughs in a record. So yeah, that's how CDs work as well, and that's why also rewritable CDs only have so much rewrites, because what it's made of basically is two thin pieces of plastic, and in the middle are several sheets of what is basically aluminium foil, and each time you decide to delete that CD, it will try and say you can ignore these little holes or this data, but after a while the whole part of that CD becomes full. So instead of saying just ignore this data, it'll clear the whole of that foil layer and start again, which is why generally you only have about 7 rewrites on a CD.
This is Answer Me That on Storm FM. Send your questions to studio@stormfm.com, facebook.com/stormamt, or text Storm plus your message to 60300.
So before we get on to those questions that I just told you about before that, we've had a question in saying, you said earlier to the naked eye, I've never dressed my eye up. where's that saying come from? So it doesn't mean naked as in with no clothes on, it means without covering it up or protection. Naked means devoid of as well, so it's without anything else. So what it basically means is with your bare eye, without any glasses, microscopes, telescopes, anything like that. So yeah, that's where the saying naked eye comes from, is basically an idioism. So anyway, on to our next question, why are eggs good for bodybuilders? So eggs are full of protein, which is crucial for the muscle building process. So every tissue in the human body, including muscle tissue, consists of proteins that are constantly being broken down and need to be replaced. So eggs is one of the best sources of protein for bodybuilders because they contain all the amino acids which are crucial to bodybuilding and gaining size and strength. The proteins for the eggs are even used in some of the protein powders as well. So rather than paying out, you could just eat more eggs. So yeah, that's why eggs are good for bodybuilders, because they're full of protein and amino acids which are necessary for the bodybuilding process. Our next question is, what's the difference between assassination and murder? So basically it becomes assassination when you're a prominent person or political figure. One of the definitions is assassination is the murder of a prominent person or political figure by a surprise attack, usually for payment or political reasons. If you're rich and in the public eye, it's more likely to be called an assassination than a murder. The two are basically interchangeable, and it's down to the way you're perceived, and there are no real grounds to say when it changes from assassination to murder, but it's probably when you become world-renowned, basically.
You're listening to Answer Me That on Storm FM. Don't forget to send your questions to facebook.com/StormAMT.
So for this next question, you can probably guess I have no idea about, is what's the oldest map of Antarctica? So when I researched this, there's no maps which seem to go before 1513. So the one which is credited with having Antarctica on it and being quite accurate for its time was the Piri-Reis world map, which was compiled in 1513 from military intelligence by the Ottoman admiral and cartographer Piri-Reis, and approximately 1/3 of the map still survives today. It has great accuracy of the coast of Europe, North America and Brazil, and reasonable accuracy of some Atlantic islands, including the Azores, Canary Islands, and apparently a mythical island of Antillia as well, and possibly Japan. I don't know why they say possibly, because if they can see it, they should know if Japan's on there or not. But anyway, it's said to have significant importance because of the extent of exploration of the New World by approximately 1510. And it also used some of Columbus's maps, which are otherwise lost today, as some of its sources. It also used 10 Arab maps to be drawn, including some Portuguese maps as well. And it's been credited, or recently been the focus of pseudo-historic claims of pre-modern exploration of the Antarctic coast, with the first confirmed landing on Antarctica not being until 1820. So it's dubious as to how accurate this map actually is of Antarctica, but it is the oldest known map with Antarctica on it. So yeah, I hope that was what the person who wrote in was looking for, because I didn't really know where to go with this one. So I'm also going to go on to our next question then. Seems I haven't been talking that long. What's the longest coach trip record, and where did it go? Well, there's actually, or allegedly in 2009 anyway, was a regular service from London to Sydney. Now, if I had to go that long on a bus, I think I would do my own head in. But it was a 15,000 mile trip over 84 days by a company called Ozbus, and it went by quite a few places, but the ones which were listed on some of the news reports I read include Prague, Transylvania, Istanbul, Galapagos Islands, Everest, Sumatra and Allura. So yeah, that was the longest coach trip going from London to Sydney. And as it's the other side of the world, that would probably be the longest one you'll be able to find as well. I don't know how successful they were on making it a regular trip, but when I looked at some of the prices for it, it was saying around £4,000 and stuff like that, which is a hell of a lot of money when you can get a flight for a lot less. But I suppose if you're scared of flying and you're okay with ferries and things, then it's ideal for you to get to Australia. But to spend 84 days on a bus and then have to spend 84 days presumably to come back as well, you better have a lot of money saved up and a lot of time on your hands. It's questionable how much you'd actually enjoy being there with the thought of 84 days on a bus returning back looming over your head.
This is Answer Me That on Storm FM, sponsored by Bar Uno.
So our next question is, why can't I sleep if my feet are cold? So there's quite a few theories around this, as I'm sure you can imagine. The main scientific reasons are due to thermoregulation, so the body's heat distribution. It's strongly linked to sleep cycles, and even lying down can increase your sleepiness by redistributing heat in the body from the core to the periphery, so hands and feet. And that's why in a lot of group guided meditations and things like that, people tend to fall asleep, is because the way the heat is redistributed around their body. And that's also why when you sleep you have a blanket put over you, because your core body temperature tends to drop as the heat is distributed more evenly around your body. So that's one of the reasons. And poor blood flow can cause a reduction in the temperature of the extremities, and researchers theorise that their hands and feet, therefore being warm, may be associated with sleepiness. Another reason for it is going back in history to the fight or flight response, even these days as well if you're an explorer. So if you go into a temperature-induced coma, your body will try and centre its heat around the stomach and the heart and the brain, and try and keep the core bits of your body basically warm and to keep you alive, because you can always lose a leg or an arm, but if your heart freezes, you're kind of stuffed. But also when your body reduces in temperature, it can make the oxygen go to your brain less, and it's not oxygenated as well, which means you can have all sorts of neurological problems. Now, some of the research I've read actually shows that the best way to get sleep is to keep your room around 17 to 23 degrees. Temperatures above 23.8 and below 12 degrees centigrade, that is, are thought to be bad for sleep and will make you have a restless night. So if you keep your house boiling hot, it's meant to be not good for sleep, although from anecdotal evidence I can tell you that it makes some people fall asleep, and yeah, some people can just sleep anywhere. There you go. So our next question of the day is, what is haggis made of? So this is probably something you don't want to eat because you know it's made up of sheep's bits. Haggis is a large spherical sausage made of the liver, heart, lungs of a sheep, which are all chopped up and mixed together with beef or mutton suet and oatmeal, and seasoned with onion, cayenne pepper and other spices, and is all packed into a sheep's stomach and boiled. So yeah, hopefully you're not eating right now. Our last question for the day now is, how are clouds formed? This is probably something people have pondered quite often over the years or been taught and forgot. But it's when warm air rises, it expands and cools, and the cool air can't hold the moisture anymore or as much water vapour. So as it cools, it starts to condense, and in the air, as we know, it's not clean. There are tiny particles of dust which these latch onto, and these basically cause the clouds as the pieces of dust are floating. The tiny droplets form around each dust particle, and when the billions add up together of dust particles and moisture, they become visible clouds. The way clouds work is they scatter rays of light, quite obviously, which make them appear white generally. But if the clouds get thick enough or high enough, then the light can't penetrate it as well. So if there's quite a few together, it can make the clouds go grey or even black at times, which is why you get the different coloured clouds. Don't forget to get in contact as we need your questions to make the show work. You can email us studio@stormfm.com. Use the subject line AMT, text Storm plus your message to 60300, text charge at your standard network rate. Go to facebook.com/stormamt or visit our website answermethat.tk and follow the instructions there. You can also catch up on all of our previous episodes apart from the two which didn't record properly